Guys, I want to welcome you to another episode of the Advisory Board podcast. I've got with me a special guest, Greg Long. He's from the Phoenix franchise brands. If you guys don't know them, they own several brands you've heard of for sure. So your Spray Foam Genie, Furryland, Door Renew, and I forgot one, Fetch Pet Care. So Greg's been in the industry for like 25 years. He's fantastic. He's told me a few times he's not an entrepreneur. He's the guy that takes an entrepreneurial concept and makes it work. And he's obviously got a gift at it. Been involved in a ton of other brands that you shared with me, Greg. So welcome to the show. Tell us a little bit about you and about your platform company, your Phoenix brands.
Thanks so much for having me on, Dave. And I'm embarrassed to tell you, I wish it was 25 years. It's actually 40. I had a birthday this year, and you get a little bit older. Now I started when I was a kid, so I'm really not that old, but it actually is. I can't believe it. It's 4 decades. So I've taken a lot of grief from my kids and family and staff here. But Phoenix Franchise Brands is a very dynamic, very energetic organization that works across really two industries, soon to be three. We're heavily involved in the pet space. Just a wonderful industry. Every metric in the pet space is measured with a B. It's just incredible. I mean, even through COVID, people think about their pets as kids, and sometimes they think about them even more importantly than their kids. Shame on them, but they do. And their little fur babies are very, very important. So our two pet brands are Fetch, which is the largest privately held dog walking and sitting company in the country. We're in just about every state. We've got about 170 franchisees, just wonderful people. And our other brand, we looked long and hard to get into the mobile grooming business. I love the industry. I love the category. And I mean, frankly, it's just one of these businesses that if you're a customer and you try to get a dog groomed these days, it's very difficult to do unless you have reoccurring appointments with a groomer that likes you. Lots of groomers don't take new customers, whether they're brick and mortar or mobile. So when we open up a new Furryland, most of the time, we have weeks and weeks of bookings, and it's one of those unique industries where, at least for the time being, the supply cannot keep up with the demand. So that's our pet side, and in the not too distant future, we're going to expand to another brand in that part of the world, that part of the franchise world. On the home service side, we have Spray Foam Genie, which is one of the fastest, if not the fastest growing home service brand out there. It's polyurethane spray foam insulation. And it was created by the Ryan brothers, and they're partnered up with my oldest boy, Kevin, and my youngest, Stephen, and they're taking the world by storm. They don't have the country sold out yet, but they're getting close. And the unit economics in Spray Foam Genie are just incredible. It's just a great brand, and it's one of those things when I first took a look at it, and my son Kevin was very excited about it. When we look at emerging companies that are franchisable or might be, how much have they really kind of looked at their business and their industry, and is there a system that takes care of every single element of that business? And this thing was so granularly produced and so ready for prime time by the Ryan brothers. I mean, it's just an amazing business. They can look at product usage across the country real time, and every one of these they're like little chemical plants, these rigs, and they can monitor and manage and like nothing I've ever seen. It's all kind of done through this digital landscape. So the Spray Foam Genie is really special. And then Door Renew, it's expanding and growing leaps and bounds. It had been around for about 10 years, kind of an owner-operator sort of thing. And we took that concept that was developed by just two terrific gentlemen, Matt and John Eggenberger. They were also part of Mr. Handyman from a million years ago in my career. That's where I first met them. But they created this wonderful business system to really put a new smile on a home space. They rework the front door and the side lights, and we're expanding that into other products and services at the moment too. But it really gives the home a new personality. And the amazing thing about Door Renew, when you drive down a neighborhood street, it's easier to pick out the streets. Once we start on a street, it's easier to pick out the houses we haven't done than the ones we have, because they're definitely the minority. The business spreads by word of mouth in an incredible way, because it gives the home a brand new presence. So and we do everything from homes to condos to churches to big commercial projects, and it's just a great process. So we're kind of living the dream here. We've got a lot of family involved in the business, and a lot of people that I've worked with for 30 years that we've followed each other around, and even though they have a different last name, they're sure like family. So
yeah, it's funny. I've told people this before, but when I first came to this industry from from other spaces, I thought that the whole franchise fam hashtag I would see on LinkedIn was kind of baloney. And then I found out it's really kind of a thing. Like it really, you start to draw people in. It's a very welcoming space, and you build friendships that you'll never shake, right? In this space. So I'm a firm believer in that now, but it took me about a year to get rid of my skepticism and realize that was really a big part of this industry, which I love.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in the franchise industry. I was self-employed at a pretty early age, and had kind of an independent slash licensing business that I started. And I started just as a kid. I didn't know what I didn't know, and for 8 years of running that business, from day one to the day I sold it, I was the youngest person there, and I learned a lot about trying to manage other people that were 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 years older than you. So I had to be a pretty good listener. Being the youngest kid sometimes isn't a big advantage. However, I do miss those days, being the youngest kid.
Yeah, 40 years of franchising. It's probably
There was
been
a tipping point, and all of a sudden I looked around the room, and I was working at Service Brands, just a wonderful enterprise, working for Molly Maid, Mr. Handyman. I started looking around the room and said, wait a minute, I think I'm the old guy. And I was. So it just is what it is, it happens.
I'm grateful we've hired some people here. I looked around the executive team a couple of years ago and realized, oh, I'm the youngest guy here by a while. Like but I'm not that young anymore. But I've been that way a lot too. I can empathize. Started my first company when I was 5. My mom didn't know I had it. I was door to door selling in the neighborhood when she thought I was taking a nap. So we'll have to share some funny stories about that over drinks sometime. But yeah, let's to let everyone know, those listening in, we're actually, the reason I wanted Greg to join me is he's an expert in operations and kind of wrapping processes and systems around a business concept to make it a true franchisable success. And so I wanted to break it down today. Greg, if you don't mind, I'd like to pick your brain a little bit about structure. This comes up a lot. It's often it's a roundtable or a stage discussion at franchise conferences, because people have a hard time getting it right. Would you mind, like, let's just jump into franchise support structure and operation structure. What do you see that works the best when you're working with like a home service concept to get enough structure around the operations so that a franchise unit can be successful?
No, sure. I think building the structure and the support system for any franchise organization. I learned a long time ago that focus is just so important. And if you give one person just too many things to do, they're not going to be happy. They're not going to enjoy their job. We have a tendency to break things down a little bit. We have a department that we call the Right Start Department. And the Right Start Department does all of those little things that are so necessary to have a good launch. We think about those people as the folks that help the new franchisees sleep well at night. It's everything from coming up with, how do you want to structure your company? Is it an LLC? Is it a C Corp? Or how are you financing it? Is it going to be a C Corp because you did a 401k rollover? Like, what does all that look like? Get them through all that process. Get the DBA dialed in. Get the microsites moving along and working with the marketing department and beginning to, help with a business plan. And, all of these things happen just rapid fire. And I think, I oftentimes I think, in particular, emerging franchisors try to bundle that and put it all underneath one person that is going to be accountable and responsible for making that franchise unit profitable. But they also have to kind of get them started at the same time. And I think you can get good at something and you can get great at something and have it become a real competitive advantage if you have some focus. And so I learned a long time ago that right start, that first impression, that's just so important to the launch of the business, and to get the right people in the right seats on the franchisee side, to help with ensuring the franchisee is making the right hires, and ensuring that you get the right talent. Good marketing and salesmanship on the front end of it could mean everything, and you got to make sure that the franchisee is hiring correctly. It's always a fine line. You can't hire for them. It's just not something that we can get involved in due to Department of Labor types of things. But by the same token, we want to make sure that they bring the right folks in and teach them a little bit about on the front end of this whole endeavor. You got to teach them a little bit about self-employment too. I think a lot of franchisors get immersed in, well, these are our systems and this is the way it works and these are our standards and all that stuff's good. But there's so many things that are intangible that they also have to understand about being self-employed, about really building the image in their brand and making good decisions. So, on the front end of all the units that we open up, we talk a lot about image, and we talk about paying off that image. And you really want the feel of the brand in the local market to be a certain way. And image can be good and image can be bad. There's a million success stories that lost everything overnight, in athletics and everything else. We read about them every day. Yeah. Politicians, athletes, you name it. And you gotta maintain that image, and you have to be ever vigilant on that. So we teach a lot of these things on the front end of every unit that we open. But focus is big. So right start is one piece. And then once that business is ready to go, there's a transition that begins. And, the team leads are the folks that kind of get them to the promised land, get them to profitability. And so we do that transition. And, we've got a couple different business models. We try not to mix the franchise support people up. Are they working with a general manager that's running that business, or is it an owner operator kind of business? Mm-hmm. And we've got another that's managed services too, that we do a little bit more for the franchisee. But just to focus on those others, which are generally what everybody has, a semi-absentee or a owner operator business, we try not to mix those support people up so that they have a focus. And I guess I think most companies do this, but geography is important too. It's important on a couple of different fronts. There's climate and all of the rest of those things. But in every, I think, metropolitan area in the country, your business is going to operate just a little bit differently. Dallas is a different market than Houston, and Houston's a different market than St. Louis. So we try to bundle those support people against the same folks geographically as well.
Yeah, well, I've got a question about that, because this is a common issue I see, especially with emerging and growing brands. It's hard to staff properly. It's hard to, you're trying to make things work. Hey, I've got one gal who can do franchise support. I've got 15 units operating today, and I've got 10 I'm selling this year. Well, how did you guys get to that point where you realize I've got to separate these roles? Because the quick start, or your right start crew, that's a totally different skill set and focus than now that I'm operating day to day. How do I make this business scale and now operate at the level where it's producing the type of income that the owners need to have? How did you decide to make that change?
I came about it in about the year 2000. I was working for Service Brands, and we had a really mature, wonderful brand. It was Molly made, and it was such an honor to work with those people. And the field staff were working really, really hard, and we started really selling again. It had been a little dormant for a short period of time there prior to coming on. And so, we really started getting on a big roll. Simultaneously, we had this other new thing called Mr. Handyman.
Mhm.
And that was exciting and new, and the franchise buying community really responded, and so we started really selling a lot of those too. And when I looked at the way that the company was set up operationally, it was just too much on a support person's plate. So we didn't increase the payroll one nickel. We just took some of those people and gave everybody a focus. So we took some of the support people that I thought would be better project managers, and we put them in the right start group. And then the rest of the folks just had more people to deal with. But if you think about it, if you don't have to be involved in every single aspect of a new franchisee, and you just take them once all the project management stuff is done, and you take them to the next level and get them profitable, you can handle a lot more of those folks. And the
Oh, yeah.
same is true with the front end. I mean, I know it sounds pretty simplistic, but you can with focus. I think it just makes all the difference in the world. And with our most mature brand with Fetch, Maria runs that. She just does an amazing job. She's our president and my wife, and she does an incredible job. And so I'm biased, but I'm not. She's just and she's just a really hard charging executive, and she's got she has this whole focus kind of feel with the way that her support staff is structured. And the mature franchisees, I mean, in any kind of brand, right, any kind of industry, they don't require quite as much. We've got franchisees that do millions in dog walking, which sounds kind of crazy, but these are pretty big, mature, sophisticated businesses. And they ironically don't need quite as much. They kind of got it down cold, and they don't need as much hand-holding as the young ones, the brand new infant franchisees. And so she's got this wonderful rhythm that she ensures that the support person ratio is much tighter on the new ones. She doesn't give as many to each support person if they're new, because anybody in this industry knows that they're just going to take a whole lot of hand holding, and after a while they graduate and they go on and they join another group. And we try to keep even on the communication side and the cross pollination of ideas and that kind of thing, we try to keep these groups together of similar size, so that they know that they're not in it by themselves, and hey, there's somebody else who's maybe had a similar struggle with this or that or the other. And so again, I still think it gets back though to focus.
Yeah, I love it. Well, you've given a couple of ideas of ways to focus this onboarding process. One, sounds like you're creating cohorts or groups of people at similar ages. I see this all the time, Greg, where in a franchise brand, they'll have, let's say they've got one franchise support person working with 10 individuals, half of which have been around for 3 to 5 years, a quarter of which are brand new, and a quarter of which are within the 1 to 3 year mark. And when you've got that type of a mix, the support person has to dedicate the majority of their time on the brand new folks, neglecting the 1 to 3 year folks, and then almost ignoring the senior folks. And so there's always this sentiment of, hey, I don't get the help I need. The folks have been around like, hey, I paved the road here for everybody, and now you're ignoring me. Like, it creates all these strange friction points for the support team. But by focusing the role, as you guys have, you've got people that are focusing on pre to launch, and then launch to 3 maybe, and then 5 to 10, or like you sounds like you're breaking them up intentionally into these different groups so that they can be specialists and stay focused. I really love what you're describing.
Well, for sure, because if you take somebody who's doing $600,000 or $700,000 or $1 million in dog walks, and the same thing with dog grooming and insulation and so forth. Those people that are there, they want to get to 2 million. And so they need a little bit different type of support. They need a much different, strategy and marketing plan and everything else that goes with it, versus somebody who's brand new that they're looking for their first 10 customers. it's apples and oranges, and to put the people that are, again, you get back to that focus, people that focus on the brand new locations, they get really good at it. And the people that focus on these folks that want to double their sales and have been around for, 5, 6, 7, 8 years, the expectation is a more sophisticated level of support. And so those peer groups, as you assemble those things, I think it is important to keep tenure in mind, as well as the level of success. There's also and we use a lot of these things, pardon the expression, teaching an old dog new tricks. When we first bought Fetch, it was just amazing. There's something about people that are in the pet industry that love animals. They're just a little bit different. I mean, they're just such big-hearted people. And when we bought Fetch, we had a lot of the folks that were in the business for a long time. They wanted to learn a little bit different way to do things. We changed a lot when we came in. We brought their first ever conventions. We brought really robust marketing plans. We brought public relations. We brought a big digital landscape to really drive, the consumer acquisition side of things. And so, there was a little bit of a, 18-month shakeout or so where we were teaching everybody, but it's still having a focus on those big franchisees. We have our most sophisticated, tenured people against those people. We want them happy. We want them smiling. We want to make sure that they're happy with what they're doing. And in order to do that, you got to bring it a little bit differently.
Yeah, no, I love that you brought that up, and it's a good metaphor being in the pet care industry. But you can teach a new dog new tricks. You can restructure the organization so it supports the old dogs better, because they don't need to learn the same things as the new dogs do. So it's, but I think it was a good metaphor, and you're spot on. And it's cool to see that you can do it, because some people question if that's possible. There's got to be a moment when you guys were starting to make those changes there where there were doubters and there were a lot of naysayers. There's a lot of friction and pushback from the franchisees. How did you guys handle that? Because I think that's where I see a lot of young brands fail, is they'll have the right idea and they start to implement, they get a lot of friction and they pull back. What gave you guys the courage to push through that wall?
I think there's a couple of things that make us sort of unique at Phoenix. There's about a third of our support staff, including myself, including my wife, including my oldest boy. They bring some self-employment experience with them. And I think that's a very interesting and tangible. Our senior leader in the dog walking business, Heather, that takes care of all of the very large operators. She was self-employed for a long time. She's a very young person, but she spent the last 10 years, well, 6 for us, but prior to that, 4 years self-employed. And so I think that she gets the respect of those folks. And I think it's just this additional little intangible. I always kind of perk up when I hear that, when we're hiring new support people and whoever's interviewing them said, yeah, they were self-employed before. That's a big deal. To me, it speaks to work ethic too, not just the experiential part of things that yeah, listen, don't worry. I've done this. I've been there. I've been sitting right where you are, worried about that next. It's going to happen. I'm telling you, it's going to happen. Don't worry about it. But our support people, we take good care of them, but they are incredible in terms of their work ethic. You see emails that are coming across at all kinds of hours of the night, and discussions with franchisees at all hours of the night, and it's our responsibility to be there for these folks, to make sure that they understand everything's going to be okay. If you ever want to get your metal tested, come through a pandemic with brand new franchisees. They had just met us the first time 2 weeks prior at Fetch, and they announced, here comes the pandemic. And so it was a very interesting time. And, we had to over communicate. And so we had conference calls for 120 days, every other day at 2:30, to talk about the pandemic, talk about all the new initiatives, and frankly, just to get to know people. But, the moral of the story is that I just don't think you can communicate enough. And when you talk about making those changes in a support infrastructure or whatever it is you're doing, I think it's you got to be a better listener than you are a talker, and just make sure that you're spot on when you're going to make those changes, whatever those might be, and then I think just do what you say and say what you do. All those old adages, give people confidence that if you do make a change, that hey, remember they changed it before and it worked out pretty good. Let's get this done. So it's always doing what you say you're going to do.
Yeah, I think I'm outlining a book I'm going to write about trust-based selling but it's the same thing in franchising, right? It goes back to the old Covey emotional jar. There are all sorts of different good metaphors around this, right? The emotional bank account, I guess is what you call it. But you've got to develop that with the franchisees. If you've invested in it plenty, I think that helps you as you're making big changes too. That they're like, okay, well, they've been honest, they've been transparent, they've done what they've said, and now they've got a new plan. I think it takes some of the sting out of that, even though it won't make it go away. Franchisees are still going to want to do their own thing, and they're not going to want to change. That's the one universal I would say is pretty clear across every franchise system is franchise owners don't like to change stuff.
You don't, and it's funny. I mean, we haven't spoken about this, Dave, but I didn't know you were writing a book, and I'm actually about halfway through one myself. But it's my book is I'm not sure anybody's ever going to buy this thing, but it's been a great education for me to kind of delve into something that I think is a little bit of a phenom out there. Every system I've ever been involved with, there was a guy at Z-Bart International. I was there for 10 years, and this fellow was a farmer, and he opened up a store in Illinois, and about 3 years later, he was the franchisee of the year. A few years after that, he was doing 3 times the average sales. And there's people like that, and I call them 5%ers. The top 5% of every franchise system I've ever been involved with, they're very people centric. At the same time, they have this entrepreneurial kind of sense about them, but yet they still follow the plan. Which those dynamics are pretty interesting. I think that some of the most entrepreneurial people I've ever met in franchising didn't make the best franchisees, but there are these unicorns out there that are the top 5%, and it's just incredible. We had some amazing people at Molly Maid and they were located geographically in all parts of the country, so it's not market specific, it's person specific.
Yeah,
and I can remember there was a wonderful husband and wife team. And this is in 2001, where the economy was it was thunderous, and we were competing with everybody for employees. And they were in the same market as a fellow who was really not doing that well. But Dave and Mary were just so good at the human resource part of it, but good at hiring, but amazing at retention. Everybody in their organization wanted all their friends to work there, and so in a business like the cleaning industry, where essentially you're reselling labor, right? The magic is happy employees, because happy employees are happy customers, and happy customers are sticky. They stick around, and I learned that a long time ago. But these folks just they're some of these 5%ers I'm talking about, and we've got them with Fetch at the convention a couple Octobers ago. We put this wonderful woman up on stage, and I think it was one of the best parts of the convention. And you could have heard a pin drop. We were just interviewing her on how it is that she got to $1 million walking dogs. And everything she said had everything to do with taking care of people. That's what she did.
Yeah.
And, so we kind of lost focus about the word focus, but that's what this woman focuses on, is taking care of people. And when you're building a support infrastructure and you've got these top 5%ers, it's so important to stay close to them and have incredible respect for them, and really appreciate what they do, because they've really got it figured out. And if you can duplicate that a little bit, if you can put them up on a pedestal, if you can share their best practices, it is hard sometimes to get franchisees or anybody. Nobody likes change, but when you've got somebody on such a high platform that is saying that, and ironically, most all of our big franchisees, they're the most humble, gracious people in the world, and they take care of their staff. They take care of everybody, though. They take care of their families and so forth. So they're willing to share. And when a franchisee who's trying to get there, here's what they do, it resonates even a lot more than anything that we tell them. It's just a really important lesson. And so, yeah, we're always very, very respectful of those folks, and want to make sure that their story is told and their best practices, and that's where we improve the system.
Yeah,
that they've figured out.
No, you're spot on. Well, the top 5%ers is such an interesting challenge, right? Because everyone wants to find the unicorns, and if you find a way to attract people in that category, you're going to explode, right? But it's hard. I've thought about it a lot. I mean, that's what my master's thesis was about grassroots and word of mouth marketing, and like trying to find ways to like attract these people to your business. And I align 100% with what you're sharing. Like, we hire people, we try to take care of our people properly, because our clients are why our clients love us. I mean, our staff are why our clients love us. There's no way around it. But I'll tell you this, even though I can't share the actual numbers. I've been told I'm not supposed to say anything, but 4 years ago, very few people knew who we were, although we'd been in the industry for like 6 years at that point, but just operating quietly. But then we all of a sudden hit the top 15 rankings with Entrepreneur Magazine. The next year we went to number 4. All I can say is we're going to be higher than that this year, and we're like performing better on these rankings than like $26 billion companies like Salesforce.com, right? It's a great tool if you're in the pharma industry. It's just a bad tool for this industry, but it's not because like our tech's great, but it's actually to your point, the way that we treat people is different. I'm an Illinois farm boy. I grew up in the middle of nowhere in Illinois, and so I have a little bit of a different worldview on how you treat people than somebody that grew up in like urban sprawl of like the coasts. And we've tried to infuse that into the culture of the company, but it sounds like you've found success doing the same thing in the franchising world, but by treating your franchisees your customers. So your formula is the same here, right? You treat your employees well. Happy employees make happy franchisees, which make less friction and more successful franchisees. But they in turn, then that perpetuates down. They then have happy employees who then have happy customers, and it's this great perpetuating machine I think you can build if you're doing it right at the top.
I no question about it, and it sure makes it easier to diversify and exploit core competencies that you might see, that you find, that you figure out that, hey, you know what, we're good at this, franchisees are good at this, we could probably do this, and the consumer will trust us to do those things. And I got some really good lessons on that years ago from Z-Bart. But when there's a lot of trust, and it makes all of those things just so much easier. It's you just never know, when a new franchisee comes in, where their ceiling is, and that was something I learned a long time ago too. And it's never the number of degrees. It isn't the marketplace. It's that individual, and it's this thing called persistence that is certainly out there. When you combine that with taking care of people and really working the golden rule, you add a little persistence in that, and you've got one of those 5%ers. You just don't know when the next one's coming along.
Yeah, I love it. Well, as much as I'd love to continue for another half hour, Greg, I think we probably easily could. I just want to summarize a couple of key points for everyone about things we got to learn from Greg Long, and some of the things he's learned and developed in his career. One, let's focus on creating happy employees, happy support staff that are then going to create happy franchisees, who can then in turn create happy employees, happy customers, because that creates sticky customers and consistent success. Two, as you create your support structure, you should definitely have more focus in the way you design it. It's hard when you're small, but if you can afford it, capitalize well enough so you can afford to have focused people that are just your onboarding and your pre-launch, and then have people that are focused maybe post-launch, even if you make it that simple, but have focused roles, divide it in a way that it's a consistent set of tasks that they're going to be managing so they can become experts in those things rather than have them do everything and become mediocre at everything. Is that a fair way to summarize a couple of things, Greg, you focused on today?
I think it's a great summary, and you don't have to increase your payroll. You just have to increase your focus. And when people become experts and they get job satisfaction out of that, you end up retaining staff so much longer. And to your point, you get happy franchisees that way.
Yeah, I love that. The quote of the day: you don't have to increase your payroll, you just have to increase your focus. I think that's a great one-liner. Greg, thanks so much for joining us. I mean, you've shared a lot. We may have to pick your brain again because I think we left a lot unsaid today, but I sure appreciate you sharing those insights.
Well, Dave, it's been an honor to be here, and wish you and yours the best this week. And thanks again for having me on.
My pleasure. Thanks.